Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, October 2nd, 2025. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. This week, Dr. Scott Lafontaine from the University of Arkansas joins Adam Ross of Twin Span Brewing, author Chris Colby, and me as we taste my Japanese rice lager and talk about the different strains of rice that lend themselves to the brewing process and about rice in the future of brewing. If you want to support us financially, check out patreon.com/basicbrewing, and many thanks to everybody who's helping out in that way. If you go to patreon.com/basicbrewing, you can see a long list of stuff that you can access if you sign up as a supporter. Financial supporters will soon see the video episode that Steve Wilkes and I shot about his Canadian lager-ish beer. You'll also get that recipe. Steve has been brewing up a storm recently, much more than I have, so I got some catching up to do. Just got back from a week in the Pacific Northwest, so catching up can begin. I'm going to start today by kegging my 15-minute extract Saison. Along with some beers, Josh Secor from Gambit Brewing sent a lot of hops for me to play with, so I'm planning to brew a round of hop samplers this week as well. Susan and I had a great trip up to Seattle. We took the train from Chicago and wound up at Oak Harbor on Whidbey Island. After some driving, that's not a direct connection. Some highlights of the trip: we did a tasting at Whidbey Island Distillery, where they have some delicious fruity cocktails made with local fruit, and a whiskey that was also very tasty. If we had been checking bags for the flight home, I would have bought a bottle of the whiskey, but that was a lot to drink in just a few days, and, I didn't want to leave any behind. We had a flight at Hierophant Meadery on the island. I liked everything that I sampled there. Lots of meads with spices, peppers, and other ingredients that were tastefully balanced. And a good variety of ABVs from beer strength up to wine strength. So that was good. And on the way back to Seattle, we had lunch at Salish Sea Brewing Company in Edmonds. Had a fun flight of beers there and delicious food. And that's just the place I'd like to hang out. I wish they'd open a location here in town. I talked to the owner, but I don't think he's up for it. I said, give me a call if you're ever interested in Northwest Arkansas. He's like, I don't know. Anyway, I think I would be there way too much anyway if they had a southern branch of the Salish Sea Brewing Company. The weather was perfect all the time we were up there, except for the drive from the island back to Seattle. But that's okay. We were just driving. People complain about the weather in Seattle and thereabouts, but it's always beautiful when we go there. So if you're planning an outdoor event in the Pacific Northwest, invite us, and you're guaranteed good weather. Checks will not be honored. Speaking of weather, it's fall. It's a great time to be brewing and drinking quaffable lagers. And here to help are our friends and sponsors at Imperial Yeast. Imperial's seasonal LO2 Fest lager strain helps you brew the perfect Märzen, Bock, or Fest beer. This highly flocculent strain creates bright, malt-forward lagers with a clean finish. Get your hands on some Fest soon because a new seasonal is coming before you know it. You know we love Imperial Yeast with 200 billion cells in each easy-to-open package. My stir plate is dusty because I don't use it anymore to make starters for moderate gravity 5-gallon ale batches. And sometimes lagers, too. And my airlocks are usually bubbling before bedtime. Ask your local homebrew store about Imperial LO2 Fest, and you can find all the dependable deliciousness at imperialyeast.com. That's imperialyeast.com. Okay, a while back we formulated the recipe on this show for a Japanese rice lager. And I asked Dr. Scott Lafontaine from the University of Arkansas if he had any Arkansas-grown rice that would be good in my beer. He gave me a product that was very easy to use. And I asked Scott if he would come on the show to sample the final product and talk about rice and brewing with me, Adam Ross, and Chris Colby. Dr. Scott Lafontaine, welcome back to Basic Brewing Radio.
Hey, everybody.
You are the co-director of the Center for Beverage Innovation there at the University of Arkansas. And this is your third appearance on the show, so I haven't offended you enough that you don't want to come back?
No, it's great to be back, and this time with a beverage, right?
Yeah, that's right. You get free beer.
Yeah.
On your third your third appearance, you get free beer.
Can never complain about that.
We have another doctor in the house. We don't call him doctor very much, but we have Dr. Chris Colby down there in Texas, who also has free beer.
Thanks for having me on the show, James.
And then up in Bettendorf, Iowa, at Twin Span Brewing is Adam Ross.
I'm not a doctor, but I did stay at a Holiday Inn last night.
So let's kind of step back and I it took me a minute to figure out how we got here, but I had this packet of Imperial L55 Kanpai, which is a Japanese lager yeast, and so I asked you guys, along with others in our friend group, to help me formulate a recipe for a Japanese lager. And I wanted to use Arkansas rice because we've been talking to you, Scott, so much about it. So I approached you, and you gave me a particular product that I wasn't expecting. So talk about the stuff that you gave me.
Yeah, so we are fortunate that we get to work with a lot of great individuals and farmers in Arkansas. And the rice that you got to brew with is a Japanese variety. It's Yamada Nishiki, and it's produced by Isbell Farms. And they produce premium sake grade rice. They're sought after by sake brewers in Japan for that rice. And that rice is really unique because it's got a lot of cool chemical characteristics and traits to it.
And this is, and I didn't get the whole. I got a sort of a byproduct. You gave me broken stuff.
Exactly. So when we create sake rice, or they create sake rice, the goal is to get to the seppuku. Right? And I don't know if I'm saying things correctly from a Japanese perspective, but
We wouldn't know.
yeah, but the starch, there's a really purified area of starch with inside the rice kernel, and what they do is now they have Cypress Creek milling. So Isbell Farms runs a mill, and they are purifying basically starch for the sake industry. And so the higher premium grade sake, the more of the bran and husk layer you remove, and the more pure the starch and more waste you have. And so the mill that basically the Isbells run, they produce that broken material, but from a brewer's perspective, it's beautiful, right? Like still a lot of good starch in there. Very like the lipid content's fairly low, so you're not going to get a lot of oxidation. And I guess today, in which like how the conversation goes, the material is way better from a performance perspective, in our opinion, than let's say flake material.
Yeah, and you said that the one distinct advantage that this variety of rice has is that its gelatinization temperature is so low. And typically when we talk about brewing with rice, there's a pre-cooking that has to happen to make those starches in the rice available for the enzymes. And so how low can it go?
We are finding some varieties and these are not necessarily commercial at this point, right? We're working with the USDA. The USDA has and for a number of crops, right? They basically secure germplasm, and they've collected it from all over the world. And so we're screening like 300 different varieties from all over the world right now. And, we see some rice varieties that gel down at sorry, I have Celsius in my head, but it's 57 C, which is
it's lower than 150.
exactly. Let me so 134.
Okay. Oh wow. Okay.
So fairly low. And that to me what has been the most surprising, right? I didn't start working on rice until 3 years ago, and I think I had this dogmatic view of what was available on market, and that everything's above 176. Like that's where my head was with rice. And I would say on average, like most rice we see is probably like 167. So high.
Yeah, I not that I didn't trust you, but I I ran a little experiment with a little pot of water on the stove, and I just used a scoop of the broken rice pieces in there, and I held it at 65 C or 150 degrees Fahrenheit for 30 minutes, and it dissolved. So I felt confident in just pouring it into my mash, and that's got to offer some, a tremendous advantage for commercial brewers.
I think for all brewers, right? Like, I think once you understand that a material can perform in a way that you didn't expect it to, right? Like that has blown me away, right? Like, why don't we grow varieties for purpose for brewing, and why haven't we done that? It's because we just didn't know that it existed. I mean, there's some cost dynamics there. Like, does it make sense to grow that material on that land for this purpose? And can you create a return on investment for that? But to be honest, I think you can do that pretty competitively,
And if you're already growing the product for another application and this is a byproduct, then it seems like a win-win.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if there's enough demand by the sake industry, right? Particularly in the US, like the sake industry is a $300 million industry. The brewing industry is 110 billion, or, and craft is 25 billion. So like, I mean, if craft brewers want this, they could have it, right? Like the purchasing power of craft has gotten to a point where you can move the needle, right? You could, craft can start to communicate what their needs are. And I don't like, part of the issue right now is most rice is grown for just edible purpose.
So is this rice japonica, right? Short grain sticky rice,
It would be,
as opposed to indica, like long grain, jasmine, basmati, and all that?
I'm gonna put it in the chat.
I mean, this scratches my. I mean, I thought that before my conversations with you, I thought that there was like long grain rice and short grain rice, and that's it, and brown rice.
Right.
So, you're dealing with an extremely wide range of different varieties of rice, and part of your research is to kind of like put some numbers on the performance of these things specifically for the brewing industry.
Should a guy with a PhD in evolutionary genetics tell you a couple things about rice?
Yeah.
For the readers?
School us.
Okay. Rice is in the Poaceae family. Poaceae is the grass family. There's two major subdivisions in the Poaceae. There's the Pacmad clade, and there's the BOP clade. And Pacmad and BOP are both acronyms for something that I'd have to look up. But anyway, Pacmad includes maize, which corn, and sorghum. And the BOP includes the subfamilies, the Oroidae, which includes rices and wild rices, and the Poididae, which includes barley, rye, oats, wheat, stuff like that. Of cultivated rice, there's two species, Oroizo sativa and Oroizo, I might be butchering this name, but glabrarima, Asian rice and African rice. And in Asian rice, there's two subspecies, indica, which is long-grained rice, and jasmine and basmati are both indica species, and japonica is shorter-grained rice. And as the name implies, is grown in Japan a lot. So that's sort of the
family
taxonomy.
Taxonomy 101. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say it is japonica. It's the short grain japonica rice.
Okay.
So
never talked to a guy who's into genetics and also is a gardener. Brutal.
Well, it's good. It's good to get that cleared up.
I'm sure there are dozens of emails that were going to come to me. With that answer. So no need to email. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the beer. And we got together and formulated this recipe on the show. This is 8 pounds or 3.6. It's 5 gallon or 19 liter batch. 8 pounds or 3.6 kilograms of Pilsner malt, 3 pounds or 1.4 kilograms of the broken sake rice. I mashed at 150 degrees Fahrenheit or 65 C for 90 minutes. At the beginning of a 60-minute boil, I added 2 ounces or 56 grams of Czech Sats at 2.5% alpha acid. I cooled down to 69 degrees Fahrenheit or 20 C because that's the temperature my basement was, and I pitched Imperial L55 Kanpai, original gravity 1046, final gravity 1006 for an ABV of 5.3%. Then at kegging time, I added 1 fluid ounce of a ginger tincture that I made by soaking ginger root in vodka, and then 2 ounces of a commercial yuzu extract. And Matt Giovanisi suggested that I dry hop with nori. I didn't do that because I just like tasted some dry nori and I was like, I'm not sure about that. So I made a tincture out of the nori, and it was like squid ink. It looked like squid ink. So I added 6 milliliters of the nori tincture just as a salute to Matt Giovanisi. So so Adam, let's start with you. What do you think about the beer?
It wasn't super carbonated when I cracked it open, but it's got a nice little ring of foam on the outside as it sits here. It is very unique in its aroma. It is, and I don't mean that as a backhanded compliment. It does have a little bit of, it's edging towards cleaning product, but it's not quite there. Funny you mentioned the ginger, because like I've used yuzu before, yuzu extract, and I've used ginger in beer. I've never used them together. I think that's what is making me think that, pushing in that direction. It's something you never smell in beer. I actually really enjoy it.
So kind of a lemon pledgy kind of a thing?
Almost, but like a really nice brand. Nicer than that. Like if they're artisan.
Better than store brand furniture policy.
Go to the nice shop and get their
not great value lemon pledge.
It's like we're walking into the co-op cleaning products section almost.
It's the organic, natural lemon pledge.
Yes.
Well, I was afraid that I was going to over flavor it, because the beer before I flavored it, and I should have bottled some, without flavoring. But it was it was nice and delicate, and a really enjoyable, light, refreshing beer. And I hope it didn't flavor it so much that I ruined it. Steve said on the video podcast that I could have backed off on the ginger a little bit because he thought it had a little bit of a ginger bite.
Yeah, and I don't think it's ruined. It's one that I'm definitely going to drink the whole bottle. I don't know if I would order a second right away, but I wouldn't be mad at having this in my fridge.
So Scott, is it offensive?
No, I think you brought up a really important point, right? Like when we think of brewing with rice, we use flakes, right? Because they're pre-gelatinized, and most of the time, what we're finding, we have research coming out probably in the next 2 months. Those flakes are not necessarily the best material to be using, particularly if you're using brown flakes, because there's a lot of lipid oxidation, unwanted kind of characteristics that we associate with rice flavor. Now you use a purified, really homogeneous, good variety for purpose. And what do we find? You get neutrality.
Mm-hmm.
And that neutrality you have to be very cautious with from a flavoring perspective, because you need less flavoring to overcome those unwanted characteristics of the rice, right? That you would have had to deal with if you were using another format. I don't, I think it's hard. We have some research that basically in non-alcoholic beer, we use rice to take away the wordy character. And then we get to, a more neutral character that people would prefer more. So really around like 50-50 inclusion rate, we see kind of best approach.
So this beer is kind of oddly hazy, almost. Yeah. I don't know if that's from the rice, because I've had plenty of your beers, James. This is hazier than normal for you.
Mine is clearing up. It's not crystal clear yet, but it's been in the keg for a while. Before I forget, you mentioned flaked rice, Scott. Paul on YouTube commented on this the video that we made. He said, I just got done making and finally drinking my Japanese rice lager. I wasn't too crazy about it. I used Belgian Pilsner malt and 3 pounds of toasted flaked rice and diamond lager yeast. It made the beer taste like a sour, doughy, tangy flavor, which took over the whole hop presence, but not the bittering. It finished at 10:08, but the rice took away that snappy profile I was hoping for, which is weird. So as you're finding out in your research that not all rice is like all other rice, the form of rice that you use in brewing also is a major factor as well.
100%. And like what I'd recommend is, you know, um, I know broken material is a little bit hard to come by, right? Like the stuff you brewed with was very special. But even what we're finding is like a single infusion is possible even at home. So for example, like say for your, like you go and buy whole rice, whole kernel rice, and you want to use that in your process, it's probably better than flake rice. You basically just start at like, let's say you start at 75 and then you use cold water to bring yourself down to 65 and then basically, do starch hydrolysis. So in the same vessel, you basically, right, it's about that delta T between the gel temp and where you need to saccharify at or, break down your starch.
Mm-hmm.
So given the fact that I've measured most rice now on market, that you probably could gel at like 75, 78, and then, just put some water in the fridge and then, use that cooling water to bring yourself down. And if you go in with a fairly low water grist ratio, like on the rice side, you still have that water cooling capacity that you could do a single infusion is what we're calling it now.
So one point that I think you and I talked about the other day is, we don't know how old that flaked rice was that, the brewer used in his product. So,
particularly at home, like a homebrew shop, right? Like you were probably using really old material that like I mean, not to I just think like sometimes that material sits around for a while because, I think it's a specialty product, not by malicious intent. I would want to be clear about that. It just like, toasted flake rice, that's not going into a lot of beer styles in my, it's fairly unique. So I just would be cautious because I think a lot of times we think raw material is stable. I guess that's really the point that I'm trying to make.
Yeah, it's
so
dry. It's dry. It's not going to rot, but it can oxidize, I guess, over time.
Correct. And it doesn't necessarily. That does not mean that it's the rice's fault. It's the format that you chose to use in your recipe.
Right.
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 Yeah, that's so I know very little about rice. I made a cold IPA last year that used a significant portion of flaked rice. Turned out great. Went to brew it again this year, and I went to my supplier. I won't name them, but they're one of the big ones. They didn't have flaked rice, and they said, "Hey, is toasted from flaked rice from this supplier okay?" Sure, I don't know. It just I know you and Chris are arguing about subspecies and all this genetic diversity from the pro brewer seat. Um, it's being treated like it's all interchangeable, and that I don't know. I actually haven't brewed with this yet, and now I'm hesitating to use it at all. But I'm sitting there on 2 bags of this toasted flaked rice.
Is it the OEO?
I think so.
What was the original flakes that you used? Crisp?
Yeah, I think so.
So the differentiation is the amount of bran on the material prior to the pre-gel. So the crisps, that's done on white rice, whereas brown and the OEO, that's done, I think, with a little bit more bran on it, and that material ages much, much more quickly, at least in what we're finding. And I don't want to like dissuade people from using that material, but you just have to be aware that there is an age limit on that, just like you would with flake oats,
Yeah,
for
it just
example.
coming up on knowing this podcast was coming up, and I was taking inventory, and I saw those bags reminded me. I just thought it was funny that like a brewer, if a brewer is told, "Hey, I want crisp Maris Otter," and they say, "Sorry, can I get you American two row?" They'd be like, "No, what are you talking about?" But when it comes to rice, they're like, "Hey, do you mind using a totally different supplier and a different method?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I So there's some education that needs to happen for me and I think I would guess the industry at large.
Uh, it is the assumption is, and I have zero actually. It's been kind of mind-boggling to me, like that we're at this place. Like particularly with the Midwest and how important rice could be or should be actually. Like this this is one of our main starch sources that we grow here in our country. That is right down the doorstep. Like the Mississippi Delta grows, a sizable amount. Like for example, we did this Aggie Con study. If the brewing industry were just to switch over to rice and stop using malted barley, there's enough rice acreage in our country to withstand that. But
Wow.
instead, we're talking about moving to Kernza. Like, not to hate on alternative grains, but like, there's no Kernza grown. It doesn't make sense for a farmer perspective. Like, really hard to grow. And after 3 years, there's yield drop. Like,
Hmm.
you have to rip that crop out. It's not perennial. And the Land Institute is doing a great job. Don't mean to, like, I don't want to talk negative about that. It's just like if we have a problem around domestic starch utilization in the brewing industry, like we have to look at what solution exists, right? Corn, rice. Um, so it's just been amazing to me that there's again these opinions of how it has been used and what's possible with it. And it really, like, it's been amazing to see from a supplier perspective, when you ask for let's say if you're going to use this thing for an extract, why is the value for extract not to the tenths like it is for barley? We have such tight COAs for barley. Why wouldn't those tight COAs be there for the rice as well? And I think part of what we're doing at the university is helping to get that COA together. And again, suppliers are going to do their best too, right? Like I think as they see the demand for good rice and quality rice materials grow, maybe they're going to, also work to make sure that they get the right materials in hand as well, right? So
Now, Budweiser uses rice, right? Uh,
Yes.
so is Anheuser-Busch surely they're as picky about their rice as they are about all the other ingredients. And are they just the only ones that are are they exerting control over farmers and making sure that their the crop is grown to certain specific, and you may not know the answer, but
I don't really, to be honest, but I think that like they use rice in a particular way. Does that mean we all have to use rice in that same way? They might be the only brewer in the world that has decoction vessels at scale,
mm,
right? But does that mean that the only way to use rice is with decoction vessels? No, right? Like I just told you, I mean, essentially you could buy broken rice in the store. You could go buy some basmati or go buy some Calrose or whatever's local to you, and then basically just do a single infusion with that.
hmm
As long as the cooling water that you have in your brewery, you can, adjust that temperature down from 75 to 65 or wherever you're going to do your starch hydrolysis at. Like, you don't need two vessels. So that already changes how you're going to use it maybe differently than how they might. The other thing that I think that historically has been really interesting to me, like anybody, if you're interested in good loggers, Greg Casey's books are really cool. I don't know if has anybody read them?
Not me.
Not yet.
Uh,
Nope.
Really, really good historical perspective on the development of the American lager scene. Highly suggest it. Really great reading. Um, but historically, Augustus Busch didn't want to put barley in the beer because it was 6 row barley, high protein for cow feed. It wasn't necessarily a cost decision. It wasn't because it was cost effective to use rice.
Hmm.
It was to modulate protein and get a better tasting product because the barley sucked.
Well, before I forget, Moody Brews in Little Rock, a brewery down there, has made a pilsner with this broken rice product. They worked with Isbell Farms, so it's been done on the a small commercial scale. Chris, is the beer offensive? I forgot to forgot to ask you about the beer.
It had to me. It has a there's like a lemony ginger character to it that, like Adam says, is kind of edging its way up to a cleaning product thing. But it's decent enough. I mean, I think um, you could dial down the extraneous flavors a lot, and it would be good. They would I think they would be better as minor contributors than as sort of it's when you smell it, that's the major thing. You're like, what is that?
Yeah, the Rice's contribution I think might have been lost here. I don't.
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
been
it's
real
totally
curious.
overshadowed. You
Yeah.
if you have like a Kirin or a Sapporo or something like that, that's very, just a straight lager and no, even pulling up the rice character in those is, you know, that's it's not knocking you out.
Well, I mean, Scott, is in most beers, or is rice's role to be neutral, or are you discovering that there are varieties of rice that do want to be the front player?
Great question. Like, I mean, historically, rice's role has been neutral. And as a commercial brewer, that's not a problem. I think the general consumer basis likes neutrality, likes a sessionable product. Um, and, it's no surprise that Michelob Ultra is tripling in volume next year, right? Like, to me, I find that
Wow.
beer very approachable and sessionable. And, um, like that the bulk of that grist bill is rice. It's built off the back, like the features and what we perceive in that are largely brought in by the starch source. Um, but we have some work that's going to come out. PhD student Bernardo Gamirez has been doing a lot of work on malted rice, and in that study we look at aromatic rice, sort of similar to the indica, but it's right now domestic consumption of rice in the country, 30% is made up of Indian basmati and Thai jasmine. And those rice varieties are called aromatic rice varieties. And so they have um, a part of their genome which starts to express this compound, which is called 2-acetylpyrroline. It smells like popcorn or butter,
Ooh.
kind of like vanilla.
Hmm.
Um, and then there's some pigmented rice varieties that are really unique. And those pigmented rice varieties actually like have anthocyanins. They can drive really unique color pickup. Like the beer made with that rice is like purple when you're done with it, which is
Hmm.
really, really neat. And those taste almost fruity. So we have made beer with both of those unique avenues. And to me, those are kind of unique, novel avenues of product innovation that haven't been seen on market previous. Um, I think like if you travel in India, obviously people are making basmati type lagers. And so that 2-acetylpyrroline flavor, I think, is there in the world of beer. Um, but when we make it, we just took so we make an IPA that's really delicious. That's basically 30% of that. We grow an aromatic variety here, which is called Aroma 22, but it has that 2-acetylpyrroline. And we took it down to Texas, and the Texas brewers could not get over it. Like as brewers, anything that's related to diacetyl, we perceive as a negative. So they were perseverating on this, like, okay, there's this butter character. And I'm like, well, obviously I can measure it. And I'm like, no, it's not this. Like, it's not diacetyl. It's characteristically different. It's not, it's quality wise, they're kind of very similar, but I could see like it, if you don't taste these all the time. So then we made that same IPA with a neutral variety. We took the Yamadanishki and made it with that. Absolutely delicious, And so depending on what you're going for, like if, for example, like I think a Czech Pilsner with an aromatic rice, like obviously it wouldn't be a Czech Pilsner, but you could make something with vanilla, like this weird hybrid style where like I hate diacetyl, but it'd be enough like diverse that maybe I could get into that. So that's a little bit long-winded, but there's, I think, opportunities now that we're understanding what's there for the rice to express itself.
The diacetyl would be excused in the Czech lagers. I pick that style, but it wouldn't have the mouthfeel impact. It wouldn't have the other impacts from diacetyl. That could be fun in something like a cream ale or a porter, even something that where a little bit of vanilla, a little bit of diacetyl could be excused.
I think a cream ale is a great idea. Like, so, and typically like what we're using is like a 30% inclusion rate. And that's enough for that, like that aromatic rice and that 2AP to get to a perceivable amount. But it was interesting because like we have been drinking a lot of that IPA and we like to highlight like our local ingredients to our brewers, to our community. And when we took it down to Texas, like I get like things in Texas just have to be sessionable and, drinkable, right? And so like the fact that you have to perseverate on note, that was like, oh, it's not as good as it could be. And maybe this attribute that this rice is bringing to the table is not really then use case for this market, for example.
Adam, is there anything that you're hearing that makes you more curious as a professional brewer to play with the rice as an ingredient? I mean, you're up in corn country, so
Yeah, no, I was thinking the exact thing. I'm starting to hear rumblings about a similar mindset around corn, and fairly recently. So the brewery's in Iowa. I've born and raised in Iowa. Corn is everywhere. There is a cornfield across the street from the brewery. I can see it when I'm on the brew deck. I had to source at least for my effort, I had to source my corn. It turns out it was coming from France because it's crisp by way of, I think they get theirs out of cornfields in France. And then out 100 feet away is a cornfield. And it was frustrating. There's a supplier now who just started growing and flaking corn, and so I started using that, and I love to brew with corn in a bunch of our beers. And now I can say Iowa grown corn, and now I'm starting to hear people playing around with different varieties of corn. And there was a podcast I was just listening to. There's a brewer who is using a variety of corns, and they're nixtamalizing all their corn so they could actually use it. So yeah, I mean, this talk of rice sounds really exciting, but we don't grow rice around here. And I have one beer I brew once a year that uses rice. But if there are more options and they had different contributions and different flavors, yeah, absolutely, I want to play with them.
Scott might be able to hook you up. He knows people. It's well, and Scott, you're at the University of Arkansas, so obviously, we haven't mentioned it in this podcast, but Arkansas grows more rice than anybody else. And one article I saw said that Arkansas grows like 50% of the rice in the country. So there's a selfish reason to be researching this kind of stuff. But I'm sure that there are other reasons. Are there any reasons, climatically or economically that brewers should start looking at rice as maybe a future alternative ingredient?
Like I'm not gonna lie, what brought me to Arkansas is I've always wanted to be in the academic space. My parents were K through 12 teachers. Service has always been super important to me. And so I wanted to make sure that and I've been very lucky to have had really great mentors. And so I did my PhD at Oregon State, and I saw, my PI was Tom Shellhammer. And
Oh wow.
basically, what Tom had in terms of the successful program at Oregon State was the hop industry was there.
Mm.
And so when I saw this position come up at Arkansas, I saw like, all right, you know, they're making a lot of rice there. The biggest end user of that rice is Anheuser-Busch. And then I just started to think about it, like, why are no other brewers using rice at scale? Like, I mean, if we're growing that much material, like, and so from a research perspective, as we've been diving in, there's just a lot of potential. It's been fun. And so to get like to the question, I mean, it's a little bit selfish, but also I think like as an industry, we import 70% of the barley into the US.
Mm.
70%.
Wow.
And what's going to happen is less and less barley is going to be grown in North America, and particularly in the US, as temperature increases. Because I mean, we can move to winter barley, and there's going to be breeding efforts, but barley's pretty fickle when it comes to climate,
Mm.
right? The hotter it gets, the drier it gets, the more protein goes up, the less extract we get. And we all know there's a fine line in the sand for quality malting barley and protein, right? That protein content can only get so high. So when you look at the agronomics of rice yields more per acre, almost 2 to 3 times more per acre than barley. And going back to Kernza yields almost a half of what barley does per acre.
Wow.
So when you just start to compare these different, like when you think about the solution for 2050 or 2030, like we have a crop that's performing well, yields well. As we start to see, like there's rice varieties like the USDA has stuff that's been collected from Norway, right? Like the photo period changes. And so I think there's just like in the germplasm, there's a lot more to explore. We still, and I just want to provide another toolbox for brewers. That's it. This is not the complete replacement. We all have struggles in our brewery right now. No, like it is not a rosy time, right? On market, and it's just providing that extra toolbox, the extra tool there so that people can adjust, communicate clearly about what their needs are, and really explore the potential.
Yeah, I see a lot of I see a lot of at our brewery, a lot of interest in gluten free.
Mhm.
If I can make a beer 100% rice that tastes great all day, I'm gonna make that. That's gonna be a new year-round offering. Uh, I mean, corn would be a potential there too, but I've done 100% corn beers and they weren't quite as marketable as I feel like if you had a variety of rices and you were still able to get the mouthfeel and the finish and everything. Absolutely, that would be a really, really big boon for tools in the brew house.
And Scott, you've done our first conversation was about your research and comparing different varieties of malted rice.
Yeah, the malted rice thing, I think we're still like 5 years out from that, from like commercial at scale availability. But that research has been supercharged recently. I mean, we're very fortunate in the sense that like over the past year and a half, I've recruited some fabulous individuals to work on this as well. So I got a postdoc who was working up at the Cereal Crop Research Institute, Dr. Hina Rani, and she just joined. And she had basically created this little mini malting system where you basically could mini malt 3 grams. And so, I told you at the beginning we have like these 300 varieties of rice.
Mm.
She has screened them and also miniaturized like the malting quality analysis. And so now we have these, let's say for example, the top 15 varieties that might work as a malting rice. And what we find is uh the part of this is also we have these commercial entities. For example, like RAR is never going to change and adapt to smaller kernel size.
Mm.
So millet, kernza becomes really hard to adapt to because of the morphological features of that grain. There'd be a lot of capital investment. With rice, there are rice varieties that are like this big,
Ah.
like in
Hmm.
massively plump, like in the germplasm, it's very similar to barley almost. Same in the brewery, like you don't want to change your mill gap size between grains, right? Like you set that mill gap and you leave it. And so if we can find features, morphological features to the right that rice that fit, um, that works. And so we have a mindset to that, but she's also identified these 15 top varieties, and we're starting to see like features across the germplasm that seem to work. But we're going to have to grow those out. We'll have to test it. We'll have to make sure that they can handle the environment. So that's the next kind of steps of this before that actually takes and becomes marketable, doing the due diligence to make sure the farmer doesn't eat it, the maltster doesn't eat it, the brewer doesn't eat it. Like, part of this is testing each one of those to make sure we can get it to your hands and it works.
Where in Arkansas is rice grown? Is it grown just all over, or is there a rice belt, or
The flat part.
how localized is it? Flat
So,
parts.
how familiar are you with the state? Or
I've been to James's house.
Not much rice
I'm,
around here.
All right.
pretend I don't know.
So we kind of like have here, I can use this.
And remember, you're on an audio podcast, Scott. So
Yeah, this
Yeah.
okay. So like we have this like shape of Arkansas and it kind of like cuts on an angle on the eastern side.
Right.
The northeastern side, there is a town called Jonesboro, and they would grow 60% of like in that county where Jonesboro is, that'd be about where 60% of the rice is grown. So 50% of the rice is grown in Arkansas, 60% of that rice is grown in and around Jonesboro. And then as you follow the Mississippi down, right, the eastern border of Arkansas is in
Hmm.
Mississippi, and most of it is going to be off of that as you move south.
Okay, that makes sense because the rice fields are flooded typically,
Mhm.
or very heavily watered. Yeah.
Yeah, typically we would grow under flood. And there's a lot of I think also, you know, paddy rice is typically how we would see. There's a lot of work that's going into the agricultural side of growing rice to make
Hmm.
that more environmentally friendly. So, for example, rice, you would leave that straw in the field, and that straw, if it was grown in paddy, would decompose and create methane. And methane, not necessarily great from a global warming perspective, worse than CO2. But what we're finding is you can remove that straw. You can grow certain varieties of rice that prevent that methogenic bacteria. You can also grow rice on row irrigation as well. You take a yield hit for that, but that's like like I think like 10 to 20%. Um, so as long as your yield was fine, you can modify how you grow that rice to have less of an impact.
Is climate change, do you see that as affecting the acreage? Because like right now, barley production is moving north, both due to climate and probably more to do to the pressures with GMO corn, just moving it out because farmers can grow barley and make nothing, or
Yeah.
they can grow GMO corn and make substantially more, and which is why, as a side, I think almost all barley right now is under contract. And so I'm wondering, just is rice something, especially if it's in a small localized area, is that under threat from possibly that habitat not being usable soon?
I would say water is probably the biggest concern, right? So reducing that water and making sure that we're using it to its max efficiency is important. But what we see is like when you look at these climate models and their impact on the agricultural yield, rice is a tropical crop, so it can withstand the temperature. Like it germs at 70 C. So it can handle that heat. Now, what we see is there are climate effects. So as nighttime temperature rises, we get what is called chalky kernels. And those chalky kernels are not necessarily great from an edible perspective. The chalky kernel is like an opaque kernel. It's like a piece of paper, like a white piece of paper. What we want, like quality edible rice, is translucent, so you can see through it. The chalk basically is when the nighttime temperature is high, the starch packs itself and it's opaque, and you can't see through that kernel, and that creates a lower quality edible rice. Not a problem for the brewer, but we're losing export market because that's impacting what our rice looks like. And so if we could find alternative uses like the brewing industry, potentially that's not like that could help our farmers out too.
Well, this has been fascinating. And cleaning product aside, I think if you drink a couple, three of them, you care less that it tastes like Lemon Pledge, but, high quality Lemon Pledge. But the goal, you said, was it Chris? You said that, you got a beer that tastes like yuzu and ginger, and was like, well, that's what we meant to do. Okay. Anyway, that's me to be defensive.
Yeah, no, I wasn't criticizing it. It's good. You described it first as a rice lager, and I was like,
it could have also tasted like seaweed. So,
I think that going to the taste of this though, like the aroma aside, like if you just consider the taste and the bite of the beer, like to me that is very rice lager-esque.
Oh.
Like the crispness, the fact that you don't have a lot of residual extract there, like that dryness, like the cleaning, that's what we find, like that rice brings that kind of quick wicking potential as well.
Yeah, rice works great in like I was saying, I brew a cold IPA with it, and it's about a third of the grist is flaked rice. It's a great platform to make something that is surprisingly bigger than you might expect. I mean, my cold IPA is 7-ish% alcohol, and it drinks like a 5. It drinks real easy, real dry.
That's a great point, right? Is like that because essentially what we're getting from that rice is glucose. So it's like using, let's say, for example, sugar. Like, in the Belgium approach, as you add that sugar, you're going to dry things out. So I think like when I taste it, like, devoid of the aroma, that's what is reminiscent, that I think that like from a taste perspective is very rice lager-esque to me.
Yeah, and corn absolutely leaves a flavor and I feel like contributes more body than rice does. I haven't done it yet, but I don't feel like my cold IPA would be as good if I swapped out the rice for flaked maize, because it brings too much aroma, too much flavor, and I feel a little bit of body too.
Well, guys, we have Scott for an hour, and our hour is almost over. So I appreciate the conversation. This has been a lot of fun, and I always enjoy learning new stuff and finding new ingredients to play with. And I look forward to hearing more about what you guys are up to, and maybe getting back together when we have some more stuff to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, as you all play with rice, feel free to reach out. And, even if it's just like, if anybody's listening out there, let me know. Happy to share what we got going on. And the same thing is come visit, right? Like we're a new entity in this area. You have new resources here because we're here. Like, come and use it. It's a public space. So here for you.
Well, thanks again to Dr. Scott for the rice, and to Adam and Chris for tasting along. As I edited this week's show, I sampled a little bit from the keg, and I think the citrus and ginger flavors are mellowing. I think it's less home cleaning product. More kind of enjoyable. Not that it was bad to begin with, but anyway, I enjoyed it. If you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to james@basicbrewing.com, or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com. And please don't forget to tell us where you're from. Check out our mobile-friendly shop at basicbrewingshop.com. Thanks to everybody supporting us through our Patreon page. Special goodies coming your way. Check that out at patreon.com/basicbrewing. It's all until next time. Until then, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm James Spencer, production hub for Basic Brewing Radio, and our website is provided by Kelly Dodson. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voice, and we'll talk to you next time, everybody. In the meantime, stay well and stay tuned. So long.